Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for May 5th, 2021. Today is not only Cinco de Mayo, but it's also Maryland State Employee Appreciation and Recognition Day. And it's always important, particularly in this virtual environment, to recognize how hard our staff has been working for the past 14 months as we've been making it through the pandemic, both in the office and those of us who are teleworking, all 151 full-time employees at the PSC. Just preparing for these meetings takes a small army of staff, everything from producing the buck sheet to having the IT work done. Today, our host advisor is Amanda Best, and we will rotate that responsibility amongst a number of our advisors who both do substantive work as well as technical work for the commission. So I'd like to recognize all of our staff, the ones that will be presenting today, as well as the dozens of staff behind the scenes that make this commission work smoothly every day. With that, we have meeting minutes to approve from our last meeting on April 28th. And I'll also take this opportunity to recognize Sue Thomas, who is also behind the scenes. She produces our minutes every week for the commissioner's review. We'll begin approval by those minutes by Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. There are two items on this morning's consent agenda. Item number 1 is a notice of ownership change from Santori Enterprises, LLC. And item number 2 is a notice of use of trade name from Planet Energy Corp.
Thank you. We'll begin with any questions by the commissioners, starting with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask one question on both consent agenda items and the respective sponsors.
Mr. Charles Pauls, if you could please mute your microphone.
Sorry, if the respective sponsors of the two consent agenda items can then answer the question. So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I've come to believe that complaint history is more instructive than whether or not something is currently open for complaints. I think it's appropriate for that for assessments, but we really want to start delving into what is the character of these corporations and how are they comporting themselves under our regulations and laws. And so I wanted to ask the sponsors if they had a chance to look at the complaint history over the last year, maybe 2 years of these two companies, and give the commission some sense of what the complaint history is on these two companies.
And Commissioner, you may already be aware we do have representatives from both companies here as well if you have questions for them.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, I must add before they answer it, and I appreciate the patience of the staff on this, but one, we may want to start incorporating complaint history into these applications, maybe, so I don't have to ask, and two, that this sends a message to a broad range of third-party suppliers and others seeking to change or apply for licenses, that we're going to be looking very closely at this stuff. I'm going to be looking very closely at this stuff going forward, speaking for myself. So, Mr. Zhang or Ms. Zhang.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Michael Zhang on behalf of staff. So I am the staff who worked on the first item, the Satori Enterprises LLC item. So these three companies that have applied or not applied have notified the commission of this acquisition have had no complaints over the past 3 years. I will note that these three companies are all brokers, and brokers typically find it more difficult to find complaints for these types of companies.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Nan Zhang on behalf of staff. So for Planet Energy, they have two complaints in 2019. Both of them are already closed. One is about the enrollment slamming. The other is rate dispute.
Ms. Yang, nothing in 2020? Something.
No, nothing 2020.
Okay. Thank you, Min. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do commissioners have additional questions of staff or the parties? Seeing none, I would move that with respect to item number 1, Santori Enterprises LLC, and with respect to item number 2, Planet Energy Maryland Corporation, that we note the respective filings. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard?
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. We are having trouble with the Executive Secretary's WebEx, so I will call the next item, which is item number 3. The applicant is Common Energy LLC. It's a request to qualify the ARC of Northern Chesapeake Region residents as low and moderate income under the Community Solar Pilot Program. We'll begin with staff today. Ms. Annette Garofalo. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Your Honor, these are two items for Common Energy. They're both really identical. I wonder if you would mind calling them both.
I will call the item number 4, Common Energy LLC.
Thank you.
File request to qualify certain residents of the ARC of Baltimore facilities as low and moderate income under the Community Solar Pilot Program.
Thank you. Common Energy LLC, acting on behalf of the ARC Baltimore and the ARC of Northern Chesapeake Region, is requesting low-income subscriber qualification for the residents of the 93 facilities operated by the 2 ARC agencies in the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company service territory. Low-income subscriber qualification is for purposes of the Community Solar Program. The 93 facilities will use approximately 1,026 kilowatts of electricity annually. The ARCs, which support Common Energy's request, are 501c3 organizations that provide housing for persons with a combination of cognitive and physical disabilities and are registered as long-term support and service providers by the Maryland Department of Health Developmental Disabilities Administration. COMAR 2062, which governs the Community Solar Pilot Program, provides for reserve capacity for low and moderate income persons. Although low and moderate income is defined by the regulations also provide that the Commission may establish alternative means to verify low or moderate income status, and by letter order dated February 14th, 2020, the Commission held that self-attestation plus participation in the Medicaid program was sufficient to qualify as an alternative means to verify LMI status under COMAR 2062. Residents of the 93 facilities at issue in Common Energy's applications have been deemed eligible by DDA to be placed in a Community Pathways waiver, a requirement of which is Medicaid eligibility, which is verified annually. Eligibility for Medicaid requires an income threshold of 138% of the federal poverty level. Staff recommends that the Commission qualify the resident of both ARC facilities as represented in these applications as LMI subscribers in the Community Solar Program under the alternative means established by the Commission in its February 14th, 2020 letter order.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. We'll turn to the representative for Common Energy LLC, Mr. Malcolm Bliss, if you have any comments, Mr. Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Garofalo, and thank you to the Commission on behalf of myself, Vice President of Partnerships at Common Energy, and also on behalf of the 2 ARC organizations. The Common Energy and the ARC organization support the staff recommendation. I'm at your disposal to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Bliss. We're becoming more aware of these filings as they're being made. I'll turn to my colleagues to see if there's any questions regarding the two applications. Seeing none, I'm prepared to make a motion that we find that with respect to item number 3, we find that with respect to item number 3, the residents of the ARC of Northern Chesapeake Region's facilities, and with respect to item number 4, that the residents of the ARC of Baltimore's facilities, as listed in its March 31st, 2021 applications, qualify as low and moderate income subscribers in the Community Solar Pilot Program under the alternative means established by the Commission by its letter order dated February 14th, 2020. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 5 on today's agenda is a request from CPV Maryland LLC to revise conditions W3 and 4 of the company's certificate of public convenience and necessity in case number 9437. On this item for staff, we have Christopher Lowe and Lloyd Spivak. For the company, Charles Schaller, Tom Favringer, and Nick Bowl. And for PPRP, Sandra McLemore and Helen Stewart.
Thank you. We'll begin with staff. Good morning, Mr. Lowe.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Christopher Lowe on behalf of staff. This item is the request by CPV Maryland LLC seeking to revise conditions W3 and W4 of the company's approved CPCN in case number 9437 filed on March 19, 2021. In its original CPCN case number 9129, CPV Maryland requested to construct and operate a natural gas fire generating facility known as St. Charles Energy Center, SCEC, in Waldorf, Maryland. This project was granted by the Commission in 2008, and the company has since filed for approval for modification to increase the facility's output to 745 megawatts. And the amended CPCNs reflecting these modifications were approved by the Commission and redocketed under case number 9214 and 9437. Pursuant to the current CPCN condition W3, the reclaimed water with turbidity values greater than 5 nepheometric turbidity units (NTU) shall not be introduced into the cooling water basin. And in this filing, CPV Maryland explained that the reclaimed water from Metawoman wastewater treatment plant has exceeded 5 NTU since February 2019 due to excessive rainfall as well as operational issues at the plant. Metawoman has been unable to provide consistent reclaimed water that satisfies the water quality standards as stipulated in the CPCN conditions. This failure has also caused operational issues at the SCEC that ultimately forced CPV Maryland to shut down its operations in many instances. CPV Maryland has worked with PBRP to address these issues and the ongoing operation concerns, and PBRP conclude that while low turbidity improved efficacy of chlorination, maintenance of residual chlorine in this cooling tower basin presents a low risk to public health when using reclaimed water of any quality in the cooling process. In order to address these reclaimed water issues and improve operations at the SCEC, CPV Maryland proposed to revise CPCN conditions W3 and W4 to allow the company to use reclaimed water with turbidity values greater than 5 NTUs in the cooling tower, as long as the residual level of the free chlorine is maintained. And this contingency provision will expire on January 31st, 2024, unless continuing issues with turbidity levels in reclaimed water from Metawoman compels CPV Maryland to request an extension from the Commission. And staff recommends that the Commission grant CPV Maryland's request to revise CPCN conditions W3 and W4 and direct the company to file a clean version of the revised CPCN condition as outlined in this filing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. We'll turn to representatives for the Maryland Department of Natural Resources.
Ms. McLemore, you're muted.
Apologies. Good morning, Commissioners. Sandra McLemore on behalf of the Power Plant Research Program. Today I have Helen Stewart with me. And as you know, PPRP filed comments on April 20th, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. McLemore. We'll hear from the company and then we'll turn to Commissioner questions. We'll hear from a representative from CPV Maryland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Charles Shaler with Baker Donaldson. Pleasure to see everybody. Hopefully, we're all getting back to somewhat normal conditions, as the governor said. We're simply here to request a minor revision to the CPCN as laid out by staff and as Ms. McLemore put forth in her letter. This was due to an unforeseen event. We're certainly really putting forth an additional procedural mechanism that will allow us to maintain operation to provide energy to Maryland and the PJM market in a broader sense. We've worked over the past couple of years with PPRP and MDE and came up with these minor revisions. And we would simply ask that the commission act favorably on it. I have Tom Favinger, who is the asset manager, with us, and Nick Bowl, the plant manager, to the extent there are any questions. And that will do it.
Thank you, Mr. Scheller. I do have a few questions. With respect to turbidity, how often does turbidity exceed 5 NTU, let's say in the past year?
I will pass that to Mr. Bowl, the plant manager. We provided the commission staff a schedule of recent events. You've asked for the last year. Nick, do you have a rough estimate or do you have that information?
Yeah, well, within the last year, hasn't been very many events. I would say it's about less than 10 events occurring. The main issue occurred definitely in 2019, from February of 19th of 2019 to March 7th. We had continual, Mattawoman had some issues down there that led to continual turbidity above 5 NTU, and then some other sporadic issues in 2019, but in the past year has been less than 10 events.
What is the sort of the record, the high watermark in terms of NTU? Have you ever crossed the line of, let's say, 15?
Back when in 2019, yes, we did record levels of higher than 15, which caused us to have to shut off the water supply to the facility.
Do you have confidence that you can maintain sufficient chlorination regardless of what the NTU level is?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bowl. Other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess first for PPRP, I wanted to find out, is this a potential issue for Mattawoman, Brandywine, and the Keys plant? Do they also use reclaimed water, and does it come from the Mattawoman water treatment plant?
I'm going to refer that question to Ms. Stewart.
Morning. I actually don't have the answer to that offhand.
Okay, I just want to find out if there's an cumulative effect here if multiple plants are potentially going to have this issue. And if I understand what the concern is there's the potential of these bacteria, viruses, the pathogens being in the plume and then raining down on the populations in the area. Is that the concern we have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the bacteria and potentially viruses as well.
Right. And I mean, even in the last several years, these areas around the plants have become increasingly populated. I'm just trying to understand if it was deemed important to have this 5 NTU standard as a condition when the plants were constructed. Is there new research now from EPA or from other source that says that it isn't as important? And then I would note that it seems it's important to us that we get back to this standard. So I'm concerned here about, are we just relaxing the standard for the convenience of the plant, or is there some new research that says that there is less concern?
Commissioner, I'd like to ask Diane Mountain, who is our engineering consultant, to answer your question.
Hi, good morning. Diane Mountain with ERM. I'm one of the team of engineering consultants that was involved with doing the initial evaluation of the safety and effectiveness of the use of reclaimed water for power plant cooling. So to answer your question, Commissioner, the first of all about the asking about the Brandywine KMC thermo plant in Brandywine. They also use water from Mattawoman wastewater treatment plant, but they also have a backup groundwater source that they were initially approved, that MDE approved them to install and utilize as part of their initial CPCN. And so they, when they have issues with the quality of the Mattawoman wastewater treatment plant reclaimed water, they can switch to groundwater. And the CPV facility doesn't have that feature. That wasn't part of the design of the plant. And then to answer your question about the safety and the rationale behind the condition, it has not changed. The initial rationale for the NTU limit is that high NTU, high turbidity, can have has a negative impact on the efficiency or the effectiveness of the chlorination process for disinfection. So the higher the NTU limit, the harder it is, or the more chlorine you have to use in order to maintain that free chlorine residual. So it's an operational consideration, but we believe, and DNR believes, that as long as that chlorine residual is maintained, it's still protecting the safety of the local population.
Okay.
And so I think part of the rationale was to make this a temporary variance, but that we tried to emphasize in DNR's filing that that turbidity limit continues to be important.
Okay. And on that point about, I guess, a condition here is as long as the residual free chlorine is maintained in the tower base. Is that something that's going to be actively monitored by PPRP, or how will we be assured that that's taking place?
As part of the conditions, the original conditions, the facility has been required to submit quarterly reports, and the CPCN condition initially did require them to submit drawings to PPRP that were reviewed to ensure that that there are adequate monitoring points for residual chlorine. Yes, so that is something that we have assurance that the plant is monitoring on an ongoing basis.
And you'll know on a quarterly basis. So if it does,
they have to
drop
yeah,
below,
they have. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to find out. I mean, will the plant, once it cease operating, if those chlorine levels do drop? I mean, how will we be sure that that condition is being maintained at an ongoing basis? I mean, at a real-time basis.
That maybe the plant can address that. We have the requirement to receive the reports quarterly, and the plant has to monitor continuously.
Okay. And then the aggregate effect, I think you mentioned one of these regional plants also uses the wastewater. Can you confirm whether is it the Keys and the Brandywine, do they use this wastewater from this Mattawoman plant?
Brandywine is the
Just-
facility I was referring to that has the groundwater backup. Keys, I believe, has determined that they're switching to exclusive dry cooling, so they are not using reclaimed wastewater.
Okay. And the Mattawoman power plant?
I believe that the Mattawoman power plant has that isn't my project. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think that any other plant is currently planning on using Mattawoman wastewater treatment plant reclaimed water.
Okay. Does the DNR have any oversight on the Mattawoman water treatment facility? Because in just reading of the various documents here, I'm trying to find out, is this really something that was unexpected, or are there just really operational issues? Are there just projects that have not been done to make sure that they can provide this treatment that's necessary for these power plants?
Yeah, I can handle this one, Diane. Last fall, we did meet with MDE's wastewater discharge permits program to talk about these ongoing violations. So the plant is operated by Charles County. It was upgraded with enhanced nutrient removal technologies to meet the state's bay restoration goals in 2007, but it has this ongoing inflow and infiltration problem associated with unauthorized discharges from sanitary sewers. So MDE is actively monitoring the wastewater treatment plant. They've issued a compliance enforcement assessment in 2019 that stated the county's in violation of its state discharge permits. They requested an engineering study of the plant. So Charles County procured a contractor to begin that study in April of 2020. And as of April of 2020, the county had already secured 75 manholes nearest to the plant and had completed some mainline and manhole rehabilitation measures. And the county has also applied for $22 million from the state's Bay Restoration Fund to assist with specific projects at the plant in the future.
Okay. And is DNR, are you satisfied with that? I mean, it just looks like some of these projects on the list, and this is, I'm talking about Appendix A or Attachment A to the staff filing, doesn't look like it's going to take place until 2023, 2024. I mean, is this fast enough to really address this problem?
Well, I mean, these I&I issues at Mattawoman have been an ongoing problem. So the state, with its priority system, with the Bay Restoration Fund, focused first on bringing all of the wastewater treatment plants up to a certain standard. And now they're moving in and starting to address these I&I issues. So we doubled the Bay Restoration Fund several years ago, and I think there's honest intent to fix the problem. It's just taking some time.
Okay. And I guess that would be my final question. I understand that's your recommendation to waive this standard, but wouldn't fixing the problem rather than just relaxing the safety standard be a better approach? And it sounds like dilution and other water sources could be another remedy to this 5 NTU issue. I mean, is that something that DNR considered?
We did have, I would refer to Nick Bull on this question, who's the plant manager. We have discussed this at length with him, and the system that they use to bring in other water sources to dilute the polluted, highly turbid water from the Mattawoman. It's just not a good long-term solution.
Yeah, this is Nick. So the way it works is when we do receive the high turbidity water and water that's higher than 5 NTU, and we have active online monitoring for this water, so we know when this occurs. The CPCN lays out some options for us to deal with this, and I don't know if you'd be able to see that, but what we do is we isolate feed to our tank. We have a 3 million gallon tank on site that stores clean reclaimed water that's less than 5 NTU. So when the water does go above 5 NTU, we bypass the tank to the cooling tower basin and we dilute the water with the clean reclaimed water that's in our tank. The 3 million gallon tank gives us about approximately 24 hours of operation before we run out. The idea being that this is enough time for Woman, if it's an equipment problem, sometimes they just have maybe some sand filter issues that occur. And the majority of the time any of this happens, they're able to get it corrected within that 24-hour window. What brought this on was a kind of a combination of plant issues and the infiltration problem that was mentioned. So it was when it goes longer than 24 hours, that's when it affects our business operation. We do not have a well, as Diane mentioned, from that Brandywine has, so we don't have the capability of using a clean water source to continuously dilute or an alternate source to remain online. The county does grant us permission to take some potable water to help replenish the storage tank we have, but we don't have the capability of pulling in enough water from our potable source, which is basically fire hydrants here on site. It does not supply enough water to either dilute or to replace the amount of reclaimed water that we need. So as I mentioned, the CPCN, the steps the CPCN lays out are sufficient to cover almost all the events that occur from Woman. It's just the extended, especially in periods of extended rain events, we do experience, Woman does have issues with turbidity. So that's kind of a summary of how the operation is.
Okay. I guess have you just considered getting a larger tank if 3 million gallons is not enough to maybe make sure you do have enough so that you can safely continue safe operations?
I might defer to Tom Favinger if he wants to answer about the thought process behind the tank.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Tom Favinger, asset manager at Competitive Power Ventures. I think that's certainly an option that we would consider as we, see how the Woman treatment plant progresses forward in their, in their capital projects to improve the operations at their facility. They've made great strides already, and we have a really good relationship with them because of we're sort of tied at the hip, if you will, in terms of our needs and their supply for us. So we've developed a very strong relationship with them and have been working closely with them as they, try to solve their problems. We see them making great progress. I think it's something that we would consider if we continue to see problems, but right now that would be a pretty large-scale capital project in and of itself to get it permitted and developed and constructed. You're probably talking, pretty close to some of the same timelines as are in some of the capital projects in the Woman's capital program.
You're talking about the larger tank. That would be a major capital project.
Yes, it would.
Oh, okay. Okay. Honestly, this was my last question. Has the company, since you're a major driver of the needs of this Woman water treatment facility, have you made some of your own investments? Are you working with the plant to try to expedite just the improvements that are needed or the repairs that are needed at this facility for your continued healthy and safe operations?
This is Tom Favinger again, and I'll ask Nick to join in here since he does a lot of the on the ground work as I'll say in developing the relationship with Woman. We spent a lot of time and effort just getting to understand their operation and their operational issues. We certainly have offered advice and counsel, even proposed solutions to additional filtration, at least temporary filtration, that would solve the problem. And last year, we actually added our own temporary filtration system in order to be able to take greater than 5 NTU water, should it come our way. That, proved to be sometimes a very effective tool and sometimes a not so effective tool, but it was a temporary solution that, did get us through a period of time where we were at risk of not being able to operate as we saw fit. So, we haven't, I guess the short version is I think we spent a lot of time with them trying to come up with solutions, many of which are just improving their operational efficiency to the standard that wastewater treatment plant should meet in any event, irregardless of whether we're taking cooling water from them. I think, the problems exist not just because we're taking the water, the problem exists because of situations at the wastewater treatment plant. And we're paying for our reclaimed water. So we are a pretty sizable source of revenue to the county to go into their budget to fix these problems. And we're happy to pay for this water.
And Commissioner Richard, this is Mr. Shaler. This is a temporary, I don't want to call it a stopgap, but as you see the capital schedule that the county has, we certainly wouldn't be before the commission but for this interim period while the county brings itself up to MDE standards, because in theory, it's the ankle bone to the hip bone to the neck bone. If they have a wastewater treatment plant that is compliant and discharging within its permit limits, we don't have the issue. We never have to invoke this condition. And so we're hoping we all get through this in a short-term period. We built it out through 24 based on the capital improvement project schedule the county gave us, but things happen. And so there's an opportunity to extend, and we would make the request. And if we have to have a discussion in 2024, we can all do that.
Okay, so you're just requesting 3 years.
Right now, the condition is drafted for 3 years, but we have the opportunity to request an additional extension at that 24 period to address, where are we? And hopefully the county will have solved the problem and we don't need it. We certainly don't want to have the use of additional chlorine and be in that situation, but these events are unforeseen.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone's answers, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll start with Ms. Stewart, Ms. Mountain. Ms. Mountain, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard you say the higher the turbidity level, the higher the probability that you could have an event that threatens the environment. Did I hear that right, my words?
I didn't mean to give that impression exactly. I think it's more accurate to say that there have been studies that show that that you need to be more aggressive in your chlorination in order to get the same level of disinfection. So in other words, in order to maintain an acceptably low level of bacteria and viruses in the water, you need to use more chlorine in order to maintain that residual chlorine level if there's high turbidity in the water.
Okay, so
does that make sense?
It does, and so DNR, Ms. Stewart, set a limit originally of 5 engineering units, NTUs. I can't say the word, so I'll just say NTU. Based on that was the basis for setting a limit. And now we have before us a proposal that says there's an unbounded limit. You can go as high as you want, as long as you have some residual free chlorination. But that residual free chlorination was in the original bounded limit. Why not set a newer upper limit that allows them to operate, but doesn't leave it unbounded? And that just seems to me to be short-sighted. Can either of you respond to that?
I can maybe respond from a technical standpoint, and then Helen, if there's anything else that you want to add. I would just say that we did look at the historical, we looked back through the reported levels of turbidity that the plant has recorded and included in their quarterly reports to DNR. We didn't see any limits that were, and any NTU readings that were, I mean, I don't have the notes in front of me, and I can't say specifically what the highest reading was that we saw, but it was not, I don't think it was higher than 25 NTU, say, just to pick a number. But we didn't think that there was a technical basis for selecting a specific number. That and this actually was part of our discussions with the
Well, can I stop? Can I stop
sure.
you there? There was a technical basis for setting the 5 NTU limit. So why wouldn't there be a technical basis for setting a higher limit? I don't get that.
The 5 NTU initially, my recollection of the analysis at that time was that it was not taken from a specific scientific finding, but it was actually a direct result of benchmarking against what other states were doing at that time. There was, we looked at regulatory, we did look at scientific studies for that initial recommendation of a limit, but we also looked at practice, industry-wide practice around the country and in other countries, and the regulatory consensus was that 5 NTU was a reasonable limit for turbidity. We did not base it on a specific scientific study that pointed to 5 NTU as having a being a meaningful threshold. It was it was mostly a regulatory benchmarking result.
Okay, well, here's my concern. My concern is this. We're going from a pretty tight limitation to an unbounded limitation. And in my mind, as the turbidity levels go up and the chlorination levels go up to some unbounded region, depending on what the wastewater treatment plant that has a bad history of environmental history, apparently, is putting out, that we're putting the public at increasing risk. And there should be some reasonable bound that says this plant, you get to a certain level, the plant needs to shut down. CPV needs to protect operations to protect the public's interest. What that level is, I don't know, but this unbounded level seems to me to be very unreasonable and dangerous to the public. So for that reason, Mr. Chairman, for that reason and for the reasons of environmental justice that we've had regarding these plants in northern Charles County and southern Prince George's County, I'm going to be voting no on this proposal, and I would like them to go back to the drawing, personally, would like them to go back to the drawing board and come up with a reasonable limitation that requires CPV at a certain level to protect the public interest, to shut down operations when the turbidity level gets too high. So that's where I'm at.
Charles, could I respond to that, Charles?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Tom Favinger would like to say something on behalf of CPV. Oh, sorry, yes.
Okay. Commissioner, do you want a response from the company?
Sure, I'll listen, Mr. Chairman, and I'll let you know if I have a rebuttal.
Thank you. Tom Favinger on behalf of CPV.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity. A couple of things I would just want to emphasize, if it's not already clear from the application and some of the discussions here. We're not removing any of the restrictions that were placed on the use of reclaimed water in the original CPCN. What we're doing, or what we're requesting to do, is to allow the continued use of greater than 5 NTU reclaimed water when it comes in, when all other means of dilution have been exhausted, in those rare instances which we've noted in our filings have occurred. So the 5 NTU limit will remain in place. And as we've experienced since the plant has been in operation since February of 2017, and I don't have the number in front of me, but there's maybe 24 instances where, or 2 or 3 dozen instances over all that period of time where we've either come close to running out of water or actually have run out of reclaimed water, clean reclaimed water that we could blend. And in the instance, and I think this addresses your comment specifically, in the instance where we cannot maintain a free chlorine level in the cooling tower as a result of the water quality coming in, we will shut down. I mean, that we are required under our CPC, under this modification, we would be required to maintain that free chlorine level in the cooling tower basin. If we cannot, then we're done and we would stop operating. And that would be an imposition just like any other permit condition that we would have, whether it's an air emission permit condition, NPDES water discharge permit condition. We're in many instances we are self-monitoring, and that is one of the mantras of CPV and the way we operate our plants. We will not operate out of compliance with our permit conditions, and we put measures in place to make sure that we're monitoring them in real time. So I can assure you we would shut down if we couldn't meet the permit condition. And just sort of, I think anecdotally, I would just also add, and I realize that this is in another state, but we do operate a plant that's nearly identical to the St. Charles facility, the exact same plant arrangement, plant design, plant equipment. It's also using gray water from a wastewater treatment plant in New Jersey. And in that instance, there is no restriction on taking gray water for use in cooling there due to an NTU limit. It's the wastewater treatment plant delivers us the water. We treat it with chlorine. We maintain the residual chlorine in the cooling tower basin, and there's no restriction. And so in that instance, the powers that be determined that was protective of the public health, and we agree with that. So I appreciate the opportunity to just mention those things.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I will just say this, though. First of all, the state of Maryland and the state of New Jersey may be in very different postures with regard to how the body politic views environmental protections, maybe. Just anecdotally. 1. 2, I have a great concern for this quarterly reporting of your monitoring of the chlorination levels, and DNR gets 4 reports a year, and I just have a lot of concerns here. I think it would be better. 1, I'm not going to take my lead from New Jersey in this regard, so I appreciate that. But 2, I think it would be better to have an upper bounded limit on the turbidity level, not the chlorination level, that forces you to shut down. And so that's my position. You haven't changed my mind, and I'll be voting no, Mr. Chairman, without prejudice.
Any additional comments? Commissioner Richard.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I guess I never turned my microphone off, but yeah, I think I've taken enough time, and I will be voting with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Seeing no other commissioners wishing to speak, I have reviewed staff's recommendation as well as Maryland DNR's position with respect to the revisions to CPCN amendments in this situation. And I do believe that I will be providing deference to the science agency with respect to their review of the proposal here. So I will be voting for the staff's recommendation as proposed. I will move that we grant CPV Maryland LLC's request to revise its CPCN conditions W3 and W4 and direct CPV Maryland LLC to file a clean version of the revised CPCN conditions as outlined in its filing. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the chairman that and am guided by the agencies that are have the expertise to make these determinations, and will also be voting aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also agree. I would defer in this case. I shouldn't say defer, but I would listen to the advice and counsel of PPRP. And I appreciate the fact that this is looked at as a temporary waiver. So for those reasons, I vote aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As previously stated, I will be voting no. And I want to say this. I agree with deference to science, follow the science, right? We hear that on a daily refrain lately, but we are placed in these positions to exercise our judgment any multiple times from over state agencies when they're involved in these CPCM proceedings. Sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. This time I don't agree, and I think that that's just fine. Without prejudice, no.
And Commissioner Richard.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I always generally give deference to the science as well, but in this case, I just wasn't really satisfied with a lot of the answers. It seemed like there was information that is still lacking without it being bounded at all, and without consideration of other alternative, better, more consideration alternatives. For that reason, I'm voting no.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Seeing no additional business on today's commission's agenda, this administrative meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Commanders, have a great day.